Hello everyone. This episode of the National Contemporary Orchestra's Repertoire Review looks at a piece that is actually very special to me. It's called Black Ball Counts Double, and it was written by David Sartor. Now before we get into this, I gotta take a quick moment to invite you to like and follow the NCO on all our socials so we can get the word out to more people. And because, as you know, every click counts. Okay, now for the fun part. Written for a string quartet or a string orchestra in 2003, David Sartor's Black Ball Counts Double received its world premiere performance in 2005. Then, in 2018, it received its European debut in Kiev, Ukraine, with the Lyotoshinsky Orchestra under the direction of American conductor me. I conducted Black Ball Counts Double as part of that year's International Conductors Festival, and it was a rarity for the orchestra because they don't typically play new works. Now, the term Black Ball Counts Double might sound familiar to some people because it was written on countless of those little handheld pinball games that were really popular long before Nintendo Game Boys. In the program notes of the score, David tells us that, quote, the title and concept was inspired by the perpetual flying marbles and almost mystical significance of the single black ball. And when you're looking at the score and listening to the recording, a fascinating thing happens. You see the idea of the pinball chaos come to life, but in a way you don't expect. And this is a treat, especially for conductors, because the behind-the-scenes action that's happening within the orchestra is actually fairly different from what the audience hears. When you're listening to Black Ball, you hear the melody being passed between voices. And when a voice is not carrying the melody, it actually takes a secondary role in order to provide supportive material for those voices that have now taken over the melody. But when you watch the score, you see a slightly different conversation happening. You see call and response. You see people agreeing with each other. And then you see those people in contrast or disagreement with others. At various points, we basically hear sentences of the melodic material being spoken, but it's not necessarily a one sentence to one voice structure. One voice will start a statement, but another voice or section of the orchestra will finish it. And even then, sometimes a voice will chime in with just one or two words in the middle of the sentence. It's one of those fun discoveries that you only really get to see and appreciate when you have a chance to listen and look at the music together. And honestly, it's why I love being a conductor. Having that overview of everything that's happening is an absolutely amazing experience, and it happens every time. An interesting part of the opening section of Black Ball is how it actually hints at what's to come later in the piece. David gives us some foreshadowing by writing straight rhythms next to syncopated rhythms. As a quick side note for the non-musicians out there, when I say syncopated rhythms, I'm talking about when a rhythm is played off the usual beat. Straight beats or straight rhythms sound like this. This is the beat. Bum, 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 bum. So very evenly distributed through the beat. Bum, 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 bum. Syncopated rhythms sound a little bit off of the beat, like this. So there's a little bit of flexibility in there. In the first section of Black Ball, David puts these two rhythms together sequentially, so the music has kind of a hitch in the flow. So you'll hear a straight eighth followed by the syncopated. So bum 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 ba 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 bum 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 ba 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 bum ba bum 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 beep bum. The twist later in the piece comes when these rhythms are played simultaneously with the straight rhythms and the syncopated rhythms. So in the same beat, you'll hear one section playing 4 notes while another section actually only plays 3 notes. They start at the same time and take up the same amount of space in the music, but the combination makes for a rhythm that really adds to the contemporary feel of the piece. One section will play 4 notes in a beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, dun, 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 and the other one will play 3 in the same beat, dun, 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 dun. So you'll get 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that's what you hear. Again, the 4, then 3, and then the 4 and 3. As a conductor, I can tell you that while this makes for some great rhythmic contrasts for the audience, it's a major challenge for the orchestra because each section has to match their rhythm to the other sections in the orchestra that are playing the same rhythm while ignoring those sections in the orchestra who have the competing rhythm. And that's when things really get sticky because the rhythms are so similar that if the players aren't careful, they'll end up playing together and then lose the whole feel of the piece. Luckily for me, the orchestra in Kiev was incredible and they nailed it. And wow, it was just an incredible moment. In the end, the audience may only hear one melody, but to see and hear this rhythmic dance that David has choreographed is, again, a magical moment that I recommend for anyone who loves music, especially for conductors and players who love a challenge. Now, despite the title and the program notes, Blackball is not particularly chaotic. Yes, there's a lot happening in and around the melody, but at the same time, there's a clarity in the texture that lets us hear David's message without having to cut through all that messy chaos that we often hear from the more avant-garde contemporary repertoire. In past pieces, I've mentioned how when a composer uses different meters, they do so in a way that you can't really tell it's happening because the melodies are written really well across those changing meters. David does almost the complete opposite by leaning into the meter changes. So there are many times when you can't help but hear that a statement of the melody was played in one meter and then given a slight variation when it's repeated in a different meter. This means the orchestra has to be very aware of the meter changes and give those meter changes the proper emphasis in order to highlight the differences. Another fun aspect to the story or programmatic side of Blackball Counts Double is the use of pauses or rests. They're fairly random, but when they hit, they're large enough to drive a Mack truck through. And as a conductor, I interpret this as the moment when you're playing the little game and the ball is about to, it's in the air and you just kind of hold your breath to see if it actually drops into the cup. And then that same moment in the music and in real life becomes so exciting because even as random as it is, as soon as it happens, it's interrupted by the same velocity and action from which it came. So much is happening in Blackball Counts Double, and yet this remains a relatively intimate piece. And quite frankly, it's a great piece to show off how well a group of musicians can work together. Not to mention how they can have such awareness of each other's actions, and really to the point where they know so well when to step forward into the spotlight and then when to take a step back. And that's often changing back and forth literally in mere fractions of a second. In the end, this piece is one of my absolute favorites because of its intimacy for the audience, the challenges it poses to the orchestra, and the crisp energy it brings to a program without being overbearing or bombastic. I really hope you take some time to visit David's website and listen to Blackball Counts Double, which is only a few minutes long. And while you're there, check out some of his other works, all of which can be found at www.davidsartor.com. And as always, the link to the recording you're hearing now can be found in the comments of this video. And as the National Contemporary Orchestra is working on some exciting new plans for this year, I hope you'll take a minute to make a donation to the NCO. All donations are greatly appreciated and tax deductible and can be made quickly and securely by either scanning this QR code here or visiting us at www.nationalcontemporaryorchestra.org/donate. As always, thank you so much for stopping by, and thank you for your continued support for today's composers and tomorrow's masterworks. We'll see you next time, and until then, as always, enjoy the performance. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.